I remember the exact moment I stopped fighting with my wife. Not because we solved anything. Because I decided it wasn't worth it anymore. That's the part nobody warns you about. It's not the yelling that ends relationships. It's the quiet. I want to tell you about the 6 months that taught me this, because I didn't understand it while it was happening. I only understood it afterward, when it was almost too late. I was 34, married 4 years, living what looked from the outside like a normal, functional life. We had a small house outside Columbus, 2 incomes, a dog. Neither of us had time to walk enough. Sarah worked in logistics, long hours, constant emails. I did freelance design work from home. On paper, we were fine. I used to tell people we didn't really fight. I said that like it was a good thing. Looking back, I think I believed silence meant peace. That's the belief I want you to notice, because it's the one that quietly wrecked things. I thought if we weren't arguing, we were doing okay. I never stopped to ask what happens to disagreement when it doesn't go anywhere. Where does it go, if not the trash? It doesn't disappear. It just changes address. The first thing I noticed, and I noticed it without really noticing it, was that Sarah stopped asking me questions. Small ones. How was your day? What do you think about this? The kind of thing you say without expecting a real answer. Somewhere along the way, she just stopped. I didn't clock it as a loss at the time. If anything, it felt like less pressure. One less conversation to perform. I remember thinking, she's just tired. Work's been a lot. There was a night, maybe 4 months in, when I made a comment about her spending too much time on her phone at dinner. Nothing harsh, just an observation, the kind couples make. She didn't argue. She didn't even really respond. She just put the phone down, finished eating, and the rest of the night went on like normal. No tension, no silence, nothing you could point to. But something in the room had shifted, and I couldn't name what. I brought it up with my friend Marcus a few weeks later, half joking. I said something like, "I think my wife just agrees with everything now. It's actually kind of nice." Marcus didn't laugh. He looked at me for a second longer than the joke deserved, and he said, "Man, that's not agreement. That's someone who stopped expecting you to change." I brushed it off. I told him he was overthinking it. But that sentence sat in the back of my head for weeks, the way something does when part of you already knows it's true and the rest of you is still negotiating. Here's the strange part, the thing that made this whole situation feel less like an argument and more like a mystery I was slowly walking into. Sarah wasn't cold. She wasn't distant in any obvious way. She still made dinner, still asked about my clients, still laughed at things on TV. If you'd met us at a dinner party, you would have thought we were one of the easy couples. But there was this small, specific thing I couldn't shake. She'd stopped correcting me. Early in our marriage, if I got a detail wrong about her day, or misremembered something she'd told me, she'd correct me right away, sometimes with an edge, sometimes just matter of fact. It used to mildly annoy me. Now she just let it go. Every time. Even when I was clearly wrong. I used to think that meant she didn't care about the small stuff anymore. It took me a long time to realize it meant something closer to the opposite. She'd stopped correcting me because she'd stopped expecting me to actually listen to the correction. There's a term for this in psychology, though I didn't know it back then. Some researchers call it emotional withdrawal, but I think of it more simply now. It's the moment someone quietly downgrades what they expect from you. Not out of spite. Out of self-protection. Because expecting less hurts less than being disappointed again and again. The turning point for me happened on an ordinary Tuesday, which is somehow always how these things happen. Nothing dramatic led up to it. I was closing my laptop after a work call, and I overheard Sarah on the phone with her sister in the kitchen. I wasn't trying to listen. I just happened to be in range. She said, "No, it's fine, I don't really bring things up with him anymore. It's easier." I don't think she meant it bitterly. That's what got me. Her voice was calm, almost casual, like she was describing a scheduling decision. Easier. Not, he doesn't care. Not, we're falling apart. Just easier. I sat there with my hands still on the laptop lid, and something in my chest did this strange drop, like missing a stair in the dark. Because in that one sentence, I understood something I'd been circling for months without letting myself see clearly. She hadn't stopped talking to me because she'd lost interest. She'd stopped because, somewhere along the way, talking to me had stopped feeling useful. Every disagreement that used to end in a real conversation had started ending in me getting defensive, or tired, or checking out halfway through. Not loudly. Just enough that she noticed. And people don't usually leave because of one bad conversation. They leave because they run a quiet, ongoing calculation. Does raising this change anything, or does it just cost me energy for nothing? At some point, her answer became no. And once that answer sets in, it doesn't feel like conflict anymore. It feels like peace. That's the trap. That's the trick nobody names. The relationship doesn't look broken from the outside, because the disagreement isn't gone, it's just gone underground, where it doesn't show up as fighting. It shows up as distance you can't quite point to. I didn't say anything that night. I sat with it instead, which was new for me. Usually I would have either brought it up immediately and made it about my feelings being hurt, or buried it and moved on like nothing happened. This time I just let the discomfort sit there, because I wanted to actually understand it before I reacted to it. Over the next few days, I started paying attention differently. Not to what Sarah was saying, but to what she'd stopped saying. The requests she used to make and didn't anymore. The plans she used to include me in that she'd started making solo, quietly, without announcement. None of it was an accusation. It was just information, if I was willing to actually look at it instead of explaining it away. What hit me hardest wasn't guilt, exactly. It was the realization that I had mistaken her exhaustion for peace. I had actually been telling people we didn't fight like it was something to be proud of, when the truth was, she'd simply concluded that fighting with me didn't lead anywhere good, so she'd quietly stopped trying. I brought it up with her, finally, on a Sunday morning, no real plan, just honesty. I told her what I'd overheard, and instead of getting defensive about eavesdropping or explaining myself, I just asked her, "Do you feel like it's not worth bringing things up with me anymore?" She didn't answer right away. That pause told me more than most conversations we'd had in a year. When she finally spoke, she said it wasn't that she didn't care. It was that every time she tried to bring something up, small or big, it had felt like she was fighting an argument I wasn't even in the room for. I'd get quiet, or logical, or shut it down fast so it wouldn't turn into anything uncomfortable. And each time that happened, she said, it felt a little less worth the effort the next time. I didn't defend myself. I just listened, actually listened, maybe for the first time in longer than I wanted to admit. Here's what I understood, sitting in that kitchen. Most relationships don't collapse in an explosion. They erode through a much quieter mechanism. One person slowly lowers what they expect from the other, and that lowering gets mistaken, by both people, for calm. It feels like nothing is wrong because nothing loud is happening. But underneath, someone has simply stopped believing that speaking up will change anything. And once that belief takes hold, the relationship isn't really being fought for anymore. It's being maintained. There's a difference, even if from the outside they look the same. I think about that distinction a lot now. Fighting for something means you still believe it can move. Maintaining something means you've accepted it as it is and you're just keeping it from falling apart completely. A lot of us live inside relationships, friendships, even jobs, that have quietly slipped from one category into the other, and we don't notice, because maintenance can look exactly like peace if you're not paying attention. Sarah and I are still together. I won't pretend one conversation fixed years of quiet withdrawal. It didn't. But it was the first time in a long while that she brought something up and I didn't make it harder for her to do it again. That's a small thing. It might be the only thing that actually matters. What stays with me, more than the specifics of that Tuesday, is this question I keep turning over. How many people in my life have quietly stopped expecting anything real from me, not because they stopped caring, but because somewhere along the way, I taught them it wasn't worth the effort? I don't think that question has a comfortable answer. I'm not sure it's supposed to.